Okay, so let's go to the PowerPoint, the integument. Okay, some housekeeping comments. If you took the test and you clicked on an image and you were very close to the correct answer, just go to ask the teacher and it'll send image of the problem that you were working on. And as long as you are close, I'll give you points. Anybody got any questions about that? Okay, y'all are a quiet group. So integument, the cutaneous membrane is your skin. Epidermis is closest to the outside. Dermis is the next layer. Accessory structures like nerves, temperature receptors, pain receptors, uh, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, and then there's the subcutaneous layer. What does the integument do? Regulates temperature, protects synthesis of vitamin D, for instance, sensory reception. Your skin knows if it's hot or it's cold or it's if there's a pain, if there's pressure, excretes waste, secretes sebum to help uh, waterproof your skin. So make sure you know. Okay, we got somebody coming in. Okay, so make sure you know all these structures. They'll all be assessed on WebAssign. So you got hair, you got sweat gland pores, you got the epidermal ridge. Okay, we got somebody else popping in. Okay, so we're back to that. So pore of a sweat gland, epidermal ridge is this finger that goes into the dermis from the epidermis. A dermal papilla is this indentation of the dermis into the epidermis. Sebaceous gland produces sebum. The erecti pillae muscle causes uh, hairs to stand erect so that you can trap air close to your body, close to your skin, so you can get warm. There's a sweat gland duct. There's touch and pressure receptors. There are hair follicles where the hairs grow. There's arteries, veins, sweat glands, nerve fibers, and in the hypodermis, fat. So the epidermis has 4 layers. On the palms and soles, there's 5 layers because the skin of your soles of your feet and the palms of your hand are much thicker than the other skin. You can tell that just by feeling it, by looking at those of the integument that covers the inside of the hand and the bottom of the foot. So what are those layers? Starting from inner, closer to the dermis, is the stratum germinativum. That's where cells are multiplying and growing. The stratum spinosum with spines, stratum granulosum with granules, the stratum lucidum, which means clear strata. That's only in thick skin in the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet. And then we have the stratum corneum, which is the top layer, which is uh, dying, and it's waterproofed by keratin. So if you look at the layers of the epidermis, you can see that the top layer is the stratum corneum, then the stratum lucidum, the stratum granulosum, the stratum spinosum, and the stratum germinativum. So the stratum germinativum are where cells are actively dividing and growing. Below the epidermis, below the stratum germinativum, is the dermis. This is called a dermal papilla. This is called an epidermal ridge. Dermal papilla, fingers from the dermis grabbing onto the epidermis, and the extension of the epidermis into the dermis is called an epidermal ridge. So the stratum germinativum is the bottom layer. Cells divide and grow. Melanocytes in the skin synthesize melanin, and depending on your ancestry, some people have more melanin than others. The intermediate strata is the spiny layer, which is right on top of the stratum germinativum. Then you have the stratum granulosum, where keratin granules are produced. No cell division. Those cells are growing and moving, growing toward the exterior to make sure you have a thick enough stratum corneum. So when you touch your skin, you're touching the stratum corneum. It has dead, flattened squamous cells. There's a lot of keratin, which means the skin is waterproofed and saturated with keratin protein. The keratin makes it tough, water resistant. Melanocytes make melanin. Another pigment in the skin is keratin, and there are blood vessels in the dermis. So melanocytes are producing melanin pigment, and depending upon your ancestry, some have more melanin than others. All humans have melanin. There's one species, the human beings. There's no races really. There's no tribes, even though we act like it a lot of times. So every human has melanin. Every human has 5 layers of the epidermis in the palms of their hand and in the soles of their feet. But skin is the same in humans and dogs and cats and goats and monkeys, and not alligators. Alligators have a slightly different skin. Not insects, but they all have growing cells that restore and replace the cells of their integument. So if you get too much UV radiation, you burn your skin. UV radiation also helps the production of vitamin D3, sunburn, wrinkles, malignant melanoma, and basal cell carcinoma. Those are 2 cancers that occur in the skin. So if you see something like this, a melanoma or a basal cell carcinoma, if you see this can be taken out pretty easily and stopped its growth. This is very dangerous. So the epidermis has 5 layers in some places. It's self-repairing system. It keeps water from being lost from your internal blood vessels and tissues and so on. It's to protect you from abrasion, protect pathogens. So there's all kind of bacteria and fungus living on your skin, and the type of the little animals that live in your underarm are different from the animals that live on your shoulder. But there's bacteria and yeast and fungi living on your skin. They're there. They help protect your skin. Everybody knows you can get a yeast infection in certain areas depending upon the moisture and the heat. But there'll be yeast growing on your skin all over the place. We go to the dermis. We'll have the papillary layer. We'll talk about that. The next layer is the reticular layer. Okay, so let's get to a picture. Okay, so let's see if we got a better picture. Okay, so here we have the thin epidermis. Then below that is the first layer of the dermis called the papillary layer because of the presence of dermal papilla. Hairs grow in the dermis, and epidermal tissue forms the lining of the hair follicles. On your face, some men choose to shave. Women usually have a much fewer hairs on their face and much softer. So hair cells originate in the dermis. They proceed to the exterior, and they're lined with epidermal cells. In the dermis, you have blood vessels, nerves, sensory receptors, erecti pili muscles, sebaceous glands. So the maintenance of the surface of the skin is from the sebaceous glands that help waterproof your skin and make their own sebaceous gland products, a waxy, oily substance that waterproofs your skin. If you look at the structure of a hair follicle, it's attached to an erecti pili muscle. There's a sebaceous gland. So you should know these structures. The papilla, where blood vessels come into the base of the hair follicle. These hairs are always growing. I'm old now. Most of my hair is disappearing, even on my head. I won't ask you anything about the cross section of your hair. Okay, so hair growth, 0.3 millimeters per day. Follicles can be discontinued, they can be reactivated, and we're always shedding hair. Sebaceous glands secrete oil to waterproof the skin. They secrete sebum. And what does that sebum do? It's a skin lubricant and skin waterproofing. Okay, let's stop this right here and have one stop recording.